All right, I'd like to call to order the regular city commission meeting for September 3rd, 2020. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Here.
Commissioner Hudak,
Here.
Commissioner Preston,
Here.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Here.
Mayor Gantz.
Here. Vice Mayor, would you like to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it's one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, I'd like everyone to please remember a few people that we have lost here since our last meeting. A long-time city employee, Flora Quinn, passed away since our last meeting. A tremendous loss for the city of Deerfield Beach, and our sympathies go out to her family and her husband, who was also an employee of the city of Deerfield Beach, and also a former employee, a longtime employee with the city of Deerfield Beach, Wayne Miller, passed away over the last couple months. So we extend our sympathies to both their families. If we could have approval of the city commission meeting minutes for the budget workshop meeting minutes of June 22nd, 2020, June 23rd, and June 24th, all of 2020.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Acknowledgement of our city board meeting minutes from Community Redevelopment Agency minutes from May 12th and June 9th of 2020, and the Hillsborough Inlet District meeting minutes from July 20th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, Hillsborough Inlet District meeting minutes from July 20th, 2020. Oh, I'm sorry, I already did that one, didn't I? My apologies. Approval of the agenda for September 3rd, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Madam City Clerk?
Yes, for those choosing to participate in the meeting, if you have dialed in via audio or a mobile device, simply dial *9 on your phone and you will be time to participate. If you have connected via Zoom video, simply hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen. You will see a participants panel. Click on that button. On the right-hand side, there is a button designated raise hand. Click on that, and then you will be selected to speak at that time.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We have our awards and recognition. Who's doing the honors on this?
It looks like it's in my packet tonight.
Perfect. Commissioner Drosky?
I normally, pardon me, I normally don't do these, but I seem to have it tonight on my desk. So with that, we're going to be recognizing one of our great partners with the Boys and Girls Club here in Deerfield Beach. So whereas for the last 10 years, Two Georges at the Cove and owner Steve Skaggs have gathered local businessmen and women and hosted an annual golf tournament, an annual billfish tournament here in Deerfield Beach, which has raised over $425,000 for Deerfield Beach youth. Whereas Two Georges at the Cove has also supported Dunn's Run, a 24-year-old annual Deerfield Beach 5K, which also supports our local youth. And whereas the $425,000 raised by Two Georges at the Cove over the last 10 years has helped to provide a safe place for the thousands of Deerfield Beach youth to complete their homework, play, and enjoy a hot meal when school is out. And whereas Two Georges at the Cove is a 2020 inductee into the Boys and Girls Clubs of Broward County Donor Hall of Fame in honor of their years of support for the youth of Deerfield Beach. And whereas Steve Skaggs and Two Georges at the Cove will be joining other esteemed supporters in the Hall of Fame, including JM Family Enterprises, Susan Burkhardt-Meiser, Bank of America, and the Broward Sheriff's Office. So please join me in recognizing Two Georges at the Cove as a community champion here in the city of Deerfield Beach.
Outstanding. Mr. Skaggs, I see you're on the line. Would you like to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, first of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Drotsky, Mayor Gantz, and all the commissioners for this award. We have really felt as a Two Georges team, led by Denise Buzelli, who runs our fishing tournament and golf tournament, that the Boys and Girls Club does an amazing job for the youth at Deerfield Beach. And we just feel like the work they do in getting these kids through high school and many of them through college and a safe place to go after school, that it's just a wonderful place for us to help the community. And, I hope they continue the good work, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, and thanks for all that you and your team do for the city of Deerfield Beach. We're very appreciative.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Drosky, your hand's raised.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think we also have someone from the Boys and Girls Club that may be on the line that may want to briefly speak as well. But if you can indulge me for a second, Mayor, just to show how intricate that the Boys and Girls Club is entwined in the community here in Deerfield Beach. I have 4 examples of some young adults who, I mean, the list could go on and on, but these are just 4 samples of youth from the Boys and Girls Club here in Deerfield Beach that these dollars go to help. First is Amber, Amber G. Amber is a 2nd generation Deerfield Beach resident and has been a member of the Jim and Jan Moran Boys and Girls Club for 10 years. The Deerfield Beach High School senior is also a part-time club member and holds the current title of the club's Youth of the Year. After high school, Amber plans to attend the University of Central Florida to pursue her career as a pediatrician. Anthony Gordon. Anthony is an alumnus of the Jim and Jan Moran Boys and Girls Club, where he was a member for 6 years. He recently graduated from Deerfield Beach High School and received the Rick Case Scholarship for full tuition to attend Nova Southeastern University, where he's studying electrical engineering. Michael Bailey. Michael Bailey is a member when the club opened in 1999. He joined the staff in the summer of 2009 as a youth aide. With the help of the Boys and Girls Club Scholarship, he has completed his AA from Palm Beach State College and is now studying sociology at Florida Atlantic University. Mike also coaches at his alma mater, Deerfield Beach High School. And the last example that I have is, I think really needs no introduction, but we all know Marcus Howell. Marcus is a New York City-based saxophonist, composer, and educator from Deerfield Beach. He attended, volunteered, and worked at the Moran Club for 10 years. He is a member of the legendary Count Basie Orchestra. He's an alumnus of Michigan State University, although we won't hold that against him, with a bachelor's and master's degree in jazz studies. Marcus is currently an adjunct faculty member in the jazz department, working with high school students at the Calhoun School in New York City. He has performed and recorded with top musicians, and he has released his debut album, Get Right, with Posy Tone Records. I could go on and on, but those are just 4 examples of youth here in Deerfield Beach. And this is what the Jim and Jan Moran Boys and Girls Club and all the help that they get from individuals and institutions like Two Georges at the Cove have done over the years.
That's phenomenal. Thank you very much for that, Commissioner.
And I do think there was someone from the Boys and Girls Club also, if you were to so indulge, Mayor.
Absolutely. Do we have someone from the Boys and Girls Club like to speak?
I think Mr. Morgan is on the line.
Yeah, Morgan, I don't know if you can all hear me.
Yes, Mr. Morgan, go ahead.
Okay, the video is not working. I'm the Matt Organ, O-R-G-A-N. I am the co-CEO at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Broward County. And just briefly hearing Commissioner Drosky talk about the accomplishments at the Boys and Girls Clubs, the common thread, right? The common thread about changing lives. And here to tell you that those lives being changed are not happening without folks like Steve Skaggs or Two Georges at the Cove. It's truly, it does take a village. They've been absolutely phenomenal. Mr. Skaggs has been awesome. They host these independent fundraisers, which is really unheard of in many cases, all for the benefit of the Jim and Jamboree Club in Deerfield Beach. So from the Boys and Girls Clubs, we just want to say thank you to Mr. Skaggs, to George's at the Cove, all involved, and of course the mayor, commissioner, and vice mayor. Thank you for all your support. And together we're changing lives. So I appreciate everybody, and thank you, Mr. Skaggs.
Thank you, Mr. Organ. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
City Attorney?
Yes, item number 2 on the agenda is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting the millage rate to be levied by the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021. Stating the percentage change by which the millage rate exceeds the rollback rate as computed pursuant to section 200.065 Florida statutes, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. And Mr. Mayor, if you could just recognize me briefly to make some statements consistent with the statute on budget.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item before you proposes a proposed operating millage rate of 6.0018, voted debt service millage of 0.3542 for a total proposed millage of 6.3560. The proposed operating millage of 6.0018 mills is 6.01% more than the rollback rate of 5.6618 mills calculated pursuant to state law. Tonight is the first reading of this ordinance. There will be a second reading, and based on the millage proposed before you, the second reading will require a 4/5 vote for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission, any comments? Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. While we are going through the discussion on the budget number 2, Mr. City Attorney, would it be prudent to also consider or at least discuss number 7 with respect to the grants at the same time? Would that be appropriate? It seems like it fits this conversation.
Yeah, Commissioner Drosky, and I believe, I don't want to speak for him, but I believe the city manager may have a presentation for you and may have something to address the inquiry regarding the community program donations. Maybe part of this presentation. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
If it's all right with you, Commissioner, we'll go ahead and let the city manager make his presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commissioners, and the public who are in attendance tonight. To start off by answering your question, Commissioner Drosky, the funding mechanism for the Community Participation Grant Program is a part of the proposed budget. The actual funding would be based on the passage of number 7 and how that allocation will be dispersed is a different conversation, but the actual Community Participation Grant Program is a part of this year's fiscal year budget. With that, I'd like to ask the city clerk to please put the presentation up. Thank you very much. And before I begin, I would like to thank all of the staff who worked tirelessly through this very, very difficult budget process. Assistant City Managers Angelina Adediran and Tom Good, Chief Financial Officer Stephanie Tinsley, our Budget Manager Allison Teslia, and all of the department heads and staff who worked on this year's budget. First, I want to just go over some key economic indicators as we typically do. Obviously, unemployment right now is very high. It has come down quite a bit since what we saw in April, which hovered about double of what we see here today. We're still a little bit higher than the state of Florida, simply because of our dependence on tourism in this area. The median household income, as you can see, lags behind not only the state average, but also the Broward County average. and that is consistent with what we've seen last year. Our poverty rate as well is higher than the Broward County average and the state average. Next slide, please. Two indicators that I just want you to briefly look at as it relates to this year's budget, which we obviously had, have been impacted heavily by COVID-19 economic impacts. As you can see, consumer sentiment has gone down quite a bit since the pandemic. And hopefully we'll start to see that turn around, but it's a clear indication of a lot of the revenue sources that we anticipate are going to be much less than we anticipated for this current fiscal year. Next slide, please. Again, the consumer price index actually from April 19 to April 20 for the greater Fort Lauderdale and Miami area, as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has actually gone down since April 2019. And that is obviously another indication of the current economic climate that we are in. I don't think it's going to be until we see these indexes turn around, as well as things like airline travel and hotel reservations start to tick up, that we're going to see some real economic turnaround, especially here in this area. And those are signs that we will be watching very closely as we move forward into this new fiscal year. Next slide, please. Just to go over the key financial conditions for the city. We do have the unassigned fund balance of 17.6 million. This does comply with the fund balance policy requirements of at least 10% of the general fund operating expenditures and transfers. We maintain a $3.5 million reserve for emergencies, a AA bond rating for both S&P and Fitch, and our debt burden is less than 2% of the total taxable value of the 7.9 billion in property value that we have. We have an estimated $10 million in the 5-year general fund CIP, as just in the general fund. And we don't have a dedicated funding source for that. We've been funding CIP projects year to year, as you well know. Prior to this economic downturn, it was really my hopes that the increase in economic activity would assist us in providing for a dedicated funding source for our capital improvement plan within the general fund. Obviously, that's not in the cards for this year. It's just something to be mindful of as we move ahead and things do improve. Next slide, please. Just taking a look at our average assessed values here in Deerfield Beach. They have gone up at a higher percentage than the county average, but we still lag behind significantly on the Broward County average. And what's important about this slide is to recognize that it is our assessed value that has a lot to do with the millage rate, because when we have low average assessed value homes, we must maintain a millage rate to support all of the services that are provided here in the city. And so it's realistic to assume that, yes, if we had the average assessed value here in Deerfield Beach, we could have a much lower millage rate. Also realize that Deerfield Beach still is the 10th lowest assessed value, average assessed value home in Broward County. What I do think we can expect for next year, or I think something that we need to be mindful of, hopefully the economy does turn around in this new fiscal year, and that we will start to see more spending, more sales tax revenue, and those types of non-ad valorem tax revenue sources. But I think what we need to be very mindful of is that it is possible that there will be lagging effects of this economic downturn as a result of the unemployment and business closures that will translate to issues and perhaps housing crisis I don't think to the extent that we saw 10 years ago, but we may see more foreclosures, and we may see home values either remain the same for fiscal year 22 or even go down a bit. So what we see this year in terms of the budget and what I am presenting as a proposed budget this year may not look too much different next year because of that. And I just want to point that out. Next slide, please. As you can see, we've held a pretty steady millage rate since FY14, having the ability to reduce it as we've moved forward and we've realized some economic activity throughout the city. And for this fiscal year, as Mr. Soroka did indicate, the complete millage rate from the city is proposed to be 6.3560, the same millage rate as last year. Next slide, please. This right here is the operating millage rate for some cities that we typically like to take a look at to compare to. Millage rates are contingent upon a lot of things. We talked about residential home values, but it also has to do a lot with other revenue sources that cities receive, as well as how large of a business tax base they have, and things like the fire assessment fee and how large of a fee that other cities have for those sorts of non-ad valorem tax revenue sources. So when you look at a city like Coconut Creek, as they have a larger millage than us, just realize that they don't have the same business and industrial base as we do here in Deerfield Beach, but they have higher home values than us. So there's a lot of variables that go into this. I do want to point out that with the one here that shows an increase of almost 8%, that is as reported to the Broward County property appraiser initially, but it's my understanding that that particular municipality is holding the line on their millage rate as well. Next slide, please. This shows the steady increase of our ad valorem tax revenue. Even though we have reduced the millage rate, we can attribute this to rising home values and redevelopment, as well as new development. So this year, we were very fortunate to, although we are having major reductions in non-ad valorem revenue sources, that the estimated ad valorem tax revenue for this year in the general fund is just above 46 million. Next slide, please. How do we get to that 46 million? Well, we get our estimated ad valorem tax revenue estimate from the Broward County property appraiser. We take that, we budget 95% of that amount per the Florida Department of Revenue TRIM compliance workbook. So the 48.1 million represents that 95%. We have our CRA allocation of 2 million, which leaves us with our 46.1 million. 1 mil generates 4.6 million of ad valorem tax revenue for the city. And we've seen a 6% increase in the taxable values of property for this fiscal year. We can attribute this increase once again to the increase in property values, as well as the new construction that we've seen here in Deerfield Beach. Next slide, please. Just to give an indication or an idea of where taxes go on a typical single family home property. When they receive their tax bill, it's important to understand that a third of that is attributable to the city of Deerfield Beach. Broward County is about a third, and the school board is about a third. And then you also have the North Broward Hospital District, South Florida Water Management District, and other small taxing agencies like the Child Services Council and the Florida Inland Navigation District. A lot of times we find that people who see their tax bill immediately call the city with the assumption that all those taxes come to the city. That simply is not the case. And there are some slides that we have moving forward to show some examples of what the actual taxes coming into the city are. Next slide, please. So here is that slide, just taking a look at some examples. If you had a relatively new home in a suburban community where the assessed value was $300,000, which could be something that was purchased relatively around this time, then you could, and they were homesteaded, you'd see your homestead exemptions of $50,000, the taxable value of $250,000, apply that to our tax rate, and the city's portion of that would be approximately $1,600. Now, using the average that we talked about previously on a few slides ago, that city ad valorem tax due is $942. We have several properties throughout the city and in communities in particular where the taxable, or excuse me, the assessed value is very low, simply because they are either condos or they have been owned by the homeowner for a very long time. In those cases, you can see just how low that city ad valorem tax revenue is for a property that is assessed at $75,000, and realize that they don't meet the threshold, a property of $75,000, for the complete exemptions of the $50,000 that are available to homeowners. Next slide, please. Just taking a look at our fire assessment fee as being proposed unchanged for this fiscal year at $235 is well below the county average of $314. And here you can see many cities with the varying fire assessment fee that they collect on an annual basis per residency within their cities. Next slide, please. So the city overall proposed budget for this fiscal year is $195,594,735. And this is the breakdown per fund. We will go into detail on these in the future slides. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of all funds, and you can see just how hard staff worked to meet our revenue projections by reducing costs this year across all funds. Some things that I want to note here is that within the building fund, you see a $3.8 million reduction, but keep in mind that we did have a budget amendment mid-year to account for some major projects that we had seen in fiscal year 20. We're just not going to have those outliers this year. But what I can say, and which is a very positive sign moving forward into this next fiscal year, is we do expect the same level of business activity as we have seen this current fiscal year. Even with COVID, a lot of it is still moving forward. There was a pause there for a little bit as COVID-19 really hit hard, and everybody was kind of scrambling to understand how to deal with this and what to do early on in March, April, and May. But since then, a lot of those developers have continued to move forward with their projects. And like I said, we are still seeing some positive building activity here in the city of Deerfield Beach. But generally across the board, you're seeing reductions. When you talk about the Road and Bridge Fund and you see the increase there, that is attributable to capital projects that are being funded by the Broward County Transportation Surtax. So that is grant funded capital projects that are doing that to that fund. And then although you do see the general fund increase, as we talk about the general fund, I'll explain that a little bit further. Next slide, please. So where does the money come from? Where are these revenue sources? Here you can see the diversification of the city's revenue sources. I think this is an important slide to understand that the city really is in a good place in terms of diversification. What's really hurting us this current fiscal year and moving into fiscal year 21, as we are discussing today, is a lot of these, the sales and use tax, the charges for service, the intergovernmental revenue sources, we are seeing steep declines and anticipating steep declines in these for next year. It's also important to recognize that not all revenue sources are external revenue sources. The way we have to account for revenue in the budget is regardless of whether it's external or internal. And so what I mean is when you look at the inter-fund transfers, that represents revenue sources from one fund to another fund. Next slide, please. Here is the revenue sources by all types for all funds. And if we can just go to the next slide. Here are all of the revenue sources that we are anticipating to see declines in next year. It is substantial. As I mentioned, charges for services, the intergovernmental revenue sources, which are things like state revenue sharing and those sorts of things. Within the miscellaneous revenue, those are things like the capital lease proceeds, the loan proceeds, fire assessment fees, interest on investments and administrative fees. Next slide, please. Okay. So where does the money go across all funds? One thing to point out here is the approximate 27% of where the money goes in terms of salary and wages and employee benefits is actually rather low, but that's because the operating expenses include the entire contract for the Broward Sheriff's Office, law enforcement, and fire rescue services. So in a city where those services are done through the city, you would see salaries and wages much higher than what we have. Capital outlay is relatively low for a budget at 5.4%. We had to really defer a lot of capital this year, unfortunately, just because of the economic outlook that we think we're going to have, and we are only doing those things that we feel are required this year, or that we could do through grant-funded sources. Next slide, please. Here are the expenditures by all type. As I mentioned, the capital outlay increases. That is particularly due to our ability to take advantage of grant funds to fund these projects. Other than that, you can see reductions across the board. Next slide, please. When it comes to the salary, wages, and employee benefits, a lot of those reductions were accomplished through a few things. We did have the ability to freeze vacant positions, which we did in this current fiscal year. We're carrying a lot of that over to next fiscal year. We eliminated some positions that were vacant, and this budget also does not include a cost of living increase or a merit increase for fiscal year 21. The departments worked very hard to lower their operating expenditures for next year, which is a significant reduction of approximately $6 million. Grants and aids, we are expecting to see a decline in our grants and aids. This would be funding sources for things like the Center for Active Aging. And we're also seeing a minor decrease in our debt service. Next slide, please. Moving on to the general fund. These are the revenue sources for the general fund. Note that the fire assessment fee brings in approximately $13 million. The entire fire contract is about $29 million. We have about $6 million in fire pension left. But as you know, that pension is closed and will be decreasing. And then 1.6 million in capital this year for apparatus and for fire apparatus, excuse me. Next slide, please. So what are the major revenue changes that we're going to see in the general fund? As mentioned, we are seeing an increase in the ad valorem taxes. The fire assessment fee is not based off an increase in the fee, but an increase on development here in the city. So we just have more properties that are being assessed. Other than that, you can see that a lot of the revenue sources, as we discussed, are going down substantially, including cash carryover. And then the one that I want to point out that I mentioned earlier in the discussion about the general fund is the $4.5 million increase, which is a loan payable proceed for the ERP system that we discussed during the budget workshops. What this represents is us going to compete for the ERP system and then funding that through a loan. And so what happens in this fiscal year is that you will see an expenditure of 4.5 million, and you will see a revenue source of 4.5 million. The next fiscal year, what you'll start to see is the expenditure of the principal and interest payment for that loan. The 4.5 million represents what we perceive as the realistic cost to implement an ERP system over the course of the next couple of years. These systems are the backbone to the administrative engine of the city, and they typically will be that for anywhere between 10 to 15 or even 20 years down the line. They're extremely important to the efficiencies of government, and we believe that this is an investment for the city's future. Next slide, please. Here is the general fund expenditures by category. Again, keeping in mind that the BSO contract resides heavily within the operating expenditures. You can see the portion of employee benefits and salaries remain relatively low for a local government, and that we have 6.8 million in capital outlay expenditures from the general fund this year. Next slide, please. This is the same amount of expenditures, but just shown a little bit differently. This is by function, so by department, if you will. Next slide, please. Just taking a moment to look at some of the budgetary highlights within the general fund. As we discussed, every department cut across the board to get us to where we needed to be this year. You see I just want to point out the internal services increase attributable to that ERP system. So if you took out that 4.5 million, you can see just how much lower the general fund expenditures are for this year over last year. Every department made extreme sacrifices, and employees are making extreme sacrifices in order to move forward responsibly and sustainably into fiscal year 21. During the budget workshops, we discussed many key items that were removed from the budget that I'm happy to discuss further should the City Commission have any further questions on those. Next slide, please. These are our special revenue funds. So senior services is a special revenue fund because of the funding sources that they get through grants. They have decreased their budget by $655,000. And keep in mind that this includes the temporary closure of the preschool due to several factors really kind of working against each other that implored us to do that. One of which is COVID-19 and the closure of schools. Two is the fact that COVID-19 is going to require us to amend operations for our core functions within the senior center, or the Center for Active Aging, excuse me, next year when we can start bringing folks back, mainly meaning spatial requirements. And then on top of that, we are likely to see the construction commencing for the Center for Active Aging next year as well. So you've got those three things working against each other. And unfortunately, we had to make the tough decision to temporarily close the preschool until we have our new building. Talked about the building services fund and why that's decreasing so much already, so I won't repeat myself there. Likely to see community development block grant go down just a little bit, but a lot of that change is attributable to them spending down prior year dollars. So we've just been able to catch up on past year projects, and so that's actually a good thing. And then the Road and Bridge Fund is again attributable to the Broward County surtax projects. Next slide, please. Oh, looks like I covered all that already, so next slide, please. Last year, or excuse me, this year, current fiscal year, we created the debt service fund. This is the first year where we can actually see a comparison of the two, since we have a fiscal year to compare it to. You see a very slight increase on this, but relatively steady. Next slide, please. And just to, you don't have to go back, but just to point out that the creation of the debt service fund actually creates more budget for the city because you have to have those inter-fund transfers. But it's all meant to be a little bit more transparent in terms of the city's debt. Here are the major enterprise funds for the city. Within utility operations, although we don't suspect that we will see a collectible decline on our revenue sources, but we may see revenue received decline based on the hard times that folks are having. Luckily, we've been able to put programs in place to help our residents and businesses with the assistance of those bills, and we're hopeful that those residents will be able to become current on their past due mortgages and bills as we move forward with several of the programs that we've done. Solid waste, the decrease there is mainly attributed to us taking a division and redistributing them amongst the organization, which is the sanitation division, as well as the deferral of capital equipment. Now, if we do see solid waste revenues start to turn around or not be where we suspect that they're going to be, we will go ahead and probably come back before the city commission to move forward with those capital expenditures. But at this time, we just want to remain extremely conservative so that we can gauge the economy within the first couple months of the new fiscal year. Next slide, please. As I mentioned on some of the previous slides, you see some relatively constant in the utility fund. It's only going down by 3.2%. I do want to point out that this year's budget does not have a rate change. However, I think it's very important for us to point out that Broward County has passed on to us a rate change. And so we have not passed that on to our customers. However, for those residents who are in the unincorporated area and receive their wastewater bill directly from the county, they are going to see a rate increase from Broward County. The Solid Waste Fund is not recommending a rate increase. The budget did not include any amendments to the recycling program. So that will be a cost saving moving forward. But as we know, there's still a lot of uncertainty with what we're going to be doing with recycling moving forward for the long term. So that wasn't considered in the budget. Ultimately, I believe that will be a savings to us, and we can address that, as I said, when we realize what the economy is going to look like probably into the second and third quarter of the fiscal year. The stormwater budget remains relatively the same, and the fee there also remains unchanged. Next slide, please. The Insurance Services Trust Fund is seeing a pretty decent decrease, and really what this is attributed to is the trending in experience. So in other words, we're not using as much of the healthcare than we did in the past, and a lot of our cases aren't as severe as they were in the past, and so that just becomes a cost savings to the city in the long run. Next slide, please. Then we're going to take a look at just the capital expenditures themselves by funding source. The capital expenditures here in the green, those would be the revenue bond projects, to include the Center for Active Aging, City Hall, and the Tigner Center. We have a few within Community Development Block Grant, which would be the home repairs, some general fund, road and bridge, mainly attributed to the surtax. Within the utility fund, these capital expenditures are attributed to some maintenance and repair items that we talked about through the budget process. And then within the renewal and replacement fund, which is the majority of where the capital expenses for utilities come from, 4.7 represents a lot of it is the AMI system, which is going to be the automated meter reading system, which will provide efficiencies to the system, as well as enhance the customer experience into water billing. With that, that is the last slide. I want to thank the City Commission for all their input throughout this process, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Commission, you have questions? I see Commissioner Hudak, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I guess the first thing I want to say is I want to again commend each department head as well as our city manager in able to provide to find these cuts. You know, we've cut about $6 million to the budget, no layoffs. So I think that is absolutely tremendous for 2020. I know that the City Commission, as well as each department head and manager, is doing everything they can to save jobs for 2021. So I really do appreciate all of the hard work that everybody put into getting this budget this far. In reviewing, and don't want to go over each department budget, but in reviewing the BSO budget, I did speak briefly to our chief because I had noticed that there was nothing in the budget for training. And as you know, the events that are happening across the country with regards to the police and the citizens, a lot of it has to do with making sure that our officers are trained properly when they are experiencing adverse situations. So I do want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that our personnel are trained properly. I know that there is a great bond between our citizens and BSO, and a lot of that has to do with the leadership in BSO and to each and every officer that is out there. But if the chief could please expand upon the training, why it's not in our budget, and what type of training we make sure that our officers have to ensure that Deerfield Beach is a great place to live. Thank you.
Can you see my video yet? You see me there?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, very good. Yes, Commissioner, Good evening. Thank you for the kind words as well. The budget for training itself goes through our regional expenses. So there is a portion of the budget where it indicates what the city is paying to our regional assets. Those things include not only things like SWAT or threat management unit or any of those kinds of things, but also includes our training budgets. And those training budgets have a variety of things that they have to cover. So we have state mandated training that we have to do. Some examples of that might be domestic violence training, training on child abuse, those kinds of things. We also have high liability training, which includes our firearms qualifications. We also have driving, those sorts of things. And we also have training that both this sheriff has initiated and training that is becoming more and more necessary. Things like de-escalation training, certain physical tactics that are new, and some of them are very effective. We have additional active killer, active shooter trainings. And we have trainings dealing with bias-based policing and non-bias-based policing, and things that that make officers more aware of what's going on and more integrated into the community. So there is a variety of training. We have upped the number of hours. The sheriff has added courses throughout this year for all of us to take. And for those that we can take online, it's proved to be a pretty good mode. And that frees up the officers' time, the deputies' time, so that they're still in the city for the vast majority of that shift. And then those things that are more delicate or need more hands-on training, we go to our regional training center or out to the range or something like that in order to do those trainings. So there is a lot more training. Most of the deputies in Deerfield Beach receive in excess of 40 to 50 hours a year of additional training.
Thank you, sir.
Is that all, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Chief. Anyone else from the commission care to comment? I'm going to open it to the public. Is there anyone from the public who care to comment? Do we have anyone who's written in, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Clark-Reed, we have you. Hand is raised. You need to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Mayor and Commissioners, Gwen Clark-Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield Beach. I wanted to ask Captain Brimlow about the cultural and diversity training. I didn't hear any mention of that in the budget, the regional budget that he spoke of. Is that in there?
Yes, that's included in that as well. So when we do the bias training, that's also included in there. There's a whole array of sensitivities that include both intra-departmental and including those that we encounter in the community. So there's a broad array of coverage that includes sensitivities both in the changes that law enforcement's seen, but also to be aware of with the changes that are happening in the communities around us. So that's all integrated in that training, and that training takes various modalities. So there is, as I mentioned, there's some online components to it. There's some face-to-face components to it. There are some interactions where there's role playing as well, with trained role players who test deputies and challenge them to put them into a stressful situation and try to allow them to work on the new skills and techniques that they gain in the trainings that BSO provides.
Also, about the confiscated funds, where is that shown in the budget, and how is that accounted for in our budget for our use?
The confiscated funds cannot be used for regular and routine expenses. So those typically come up for things that that occur throughout the year. Now, the sheriff also has a program that you can go through the main website at sheriff.org for funds that are seized by the agency itself as well, for programs and also for use in the community. In the district level, if there are things that there are folks in the community that think would be worthwhile or possibly applicable to those funds, those are things that can be considered in consultation with the city manager and the commission to see what programs that might be useful for and applicable to. But there are two venues actually for that. And the one that is readily accessible to is also to go through sheriff.org for the law enforcement trust funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to comment? Is there anyone in the chambers tonight? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it to the public commission. I will say this, I do appreciate the hard work that's been put into this to get us here. The fact that we do not have a increase in our millage rate is a testament to the hard work and the sacrifice that everybody has put forward on this. We know that it's been difficult, not just for our residents, but for our employees as well. And we certainly don't, layoffs is something we certainly wanted to avoid. I think because of some of the concessions that we've seen, that's allowed us to do that. If that changes, we may have to revert to that, but we certainly don't want to. But we also want to be fair to our residents, and they've had a very hard time with that. This is why we've been able to balance this budget despite all the decreases that we've seen. Now you will have, I've heard some people complain that says, oh, well, my taxes are going up. Well, if your taxes are going up, that means one, you can thank Broward County for their rate increase that they've given us. But as far as the city of Deerfield Beach, that's because the values of your properties have gone up. And that's a good thing. And it's great to see yet again that our values of our properties continue to grow. We are so far behind where we need to be that would allow for our millage rate to be decreased, as was pointed out by the city manager. But with that, we are headed in the right direction, and that's a very, very good thing for our city. So I want to thank all of you who put a lot of hard work into this, and I greatly appreciate it. Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. My notes are very similar to yours. You must have been peeking at my notes beforehand, but my comments are the same. I mean, remember, Mr. Santucci came on board, relatively recently, and he inherited the COVID crisis and then the budget crisis, and to lead us through those. And this is going to tie into an item later in the agenda. But to lead us through those two calamities, in all honesty, and to come out of it with a millage rate that stays the same is very phenomenal work by him and his team. They have spent a lot of work behind the scenes, and I come in on my weekends when I have my Saturday office hours, and they're here. And there's been a lot of work that's gone into this budget. So, is it perfect? No, but nothing is ever is perfect. And I think what they've been able to assemble and keep the millage rate the same is good work, and I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Commissioner. One thing I would like to say with this budget, or with the millage that's being proposed right now and the budget that's being brought forward, I'd like to see some flexibility for some minor changes here in the city that I don't feel should increase or change our budget, and this may sound minor, but it's something I at least want to say now in this budget process in case there needs to be adjustments made. But we've had a lot of people request that we convert some of our tennis courts, or more of our tennis courts, I think we've only done it with one, to pickleball courts. We've got a lot of requests for that, and I don't think that's going to make a dent in our budget at all, but I just want to put it on record right now and say that because I have a lot of residents have inquired about that. And I told them, since it was the budget time, this is our time to speak up and say that. So I'm hoping that we can take a look at this, and by second reading, if there's no changes, we're still able to pass this balanced budget that we have with some amendments in those programs. Vice Mayor Parnas, did you try?
I'll make
are
a
you trying to
motion.
raise your hand?
Being this, yes, I've been trying. Being that this is the first reading, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. We're looking for a second.
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Hudak. Motion made by Vice Mayor Parnas. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perez,
Yes,
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 3 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting the final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date.
Is there anyone from the public that'd like to talk on this item? I don't see any hands raised. Is anyone written in, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay, is there anyone in the chambers?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close it to the public commission.
I'll make a motion to approve.
second,
Motion by Commissioner Hudak, second by Vice Mayor Parnas. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perez,
yes,
and Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 4 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the budget for the Deerfield Beach Community Redevelopment Agency for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021, providing for funding through tax increment financing as provided for in Part 3, Chapter 163, Florida statutes, providing for severability and an effective date.
Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on this? Is there anyone who has written in?
No, sir.
Okay, anyone in the chambers?
No, Mayor, there's not.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Commission, anyone care to comment? I think we're familiar with that board, so I think we're well aware of the decisions that may have been made over there.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a
second,
motion, from Commissioner Hudak, second by, is that Vice Mayor Parnas? Yes, okay, we have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perez,
yes,
and Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 5 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, amending Division 9, Unsafe Structures and Housing Appeals Board of Article 2, Boards, Committees, Commissions of Chapter 2, Administration of the City Code by creating Section 2-165, Alternate Board, to provide for the ability to use an alternate unsafe structures board, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and an effective date. And this is second reading.
Okay, is there anyone from the public that wanted to comment on this item? Anyone who's written in?
No, sir.
Okay, is there anyone in our chambers?
No, Mayor, there's not.
Okay, I'm going to close it to the public. I will say this, I think this is a long time coming. I want to appreciate, I want to show my appreciation to staff for putting this in place. I think this is going to help us with a lot of issues that we have in certain areas of the city with some of these structures that we haven't been able to take action on and move forward without this. So I'm glad to see this coming forward. Commissioner Hudak, I see your hands raised.
Yes, I just want to reiterate that there are sections in all of our city, not just one district or another, where there have been continuous roadblocks in order to be able to get rid of some of those structures. So I'm equally very pleased that we're able to get something like this so that we can start moving, improving some of those areas. And I'll
Excellent.
make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner.
second,
We have a motion by Commissioner Hudak, seconded by Vice Mayor Parnas. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perez,
Yes.
and Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Okay, we're now at the public comment portion of tonight's agenda. Persons addressing the commission shall state his or her name and address and may speak for 3 minutes unless extended for 1 additional minute by the mayor. As a reminder, this is the time of the agenda for public comment to speak on non-agenda items. And if you want to speak on an agenda item, the time to do that is when the agenda item is called and the public hearing portion of that agenda item is opened. No comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibilities shall be permitted.
Thank you. Ms. Clark Reed, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Mayor. Gwendolyn Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield. I'd really like to say thank you to Two Georges because for their help, you know, with the Boys and Girls Club. They've always been there for us, for the Boys and Girls Club, and I really appreciate that. My other comment has to do with unleashed dogs in the community. Mayor, I experienced a very traumatic incident over the weekend with 2 unleashed dogs approaching me on my property and causing me to eventually fall down, and I now have a very bad sprained wrist. I did speak with the executive officer, Hofstein, at the sheriff's office, and he was kind enough to send out 2 deputies to, you know, ask me what happened and to talk about it. But the 2 deputies, they also spoke with Commissioner Preston outside of his residence. And one of the dogs was lying across the street. And I just don't understand that, why they didn't call to have that dog picked up. Because later in the evening, those 2 dogs, as I was coming from CVS, those 2 dogs were back on the street again. So I'm very concerned, you know, about people just letting their dogs out on the roadway and to be a menace to other people in the community. And I'm sure they wouldn't like to experience this harm that I'm going through with now.
Thank you, Ms. Clark Reed. No, that's absolutely terrible what has happened with you. And we will have the chief actually speak on this once we're done with this portion here. Is there anyone else from the public? Is there anyone in the chambers?
Yes, Mayor, there is. Hold on 1 second.
Sure. Commissioner Preston, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes. Just a bit of information related to the comment that was just given, Mayor. The officers that was participating in that did exactly what they needed to do. They went to the residence of where the dogs were, and you know, it was my understanding that they were given assurance that the dogs would be kept inside. So once an officer comes to a residence and in good faith talk to a resident about a particular problem concerning the dog or whatever it might be, and you basically, they give you, you know, a way to solve it, and you accept that. You know, when the officers left, I guess the dogs just got back out again. But they went to the home, they did address it, and they were actually given assurance that the dogs would be kept inside. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Clark, you have somebody here to speak?
Yes, Mayor, he's ready.
Okay. Your name and address for the record, please, sir.
1480 Southwest 5th Ave, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441.
And your name is?
Charles Ensign.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, go right.
Over that street, we need I suggest, like, if it's possible, there's too many cars running too fast on that street. we need something at least to protect our neighborhood or speed bump. I don't know if it's possible for us to help us about it.
Okay, and your street is again, sir?
Fifth Ave.
Okay. Thank
Mayor.
you. Mayor.
Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Preston.
I was gonna say, if you could have that gentleman call me, I can give him the direction that he would need in order for that to be accomplished.
Outstanding, sir. We'll have staff get with you and to make sure you can reach out and speak to your commissioner and see if we can get this solved for you.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the chambers who'd like to speak?
No, Mayor Gans, there's not.
Okay, and who's written in? Okay, Mr. Santucci, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I would just ask if that gentleman could please provide his phone number to Ms. Montemayor in the chambers so that I can have staff reach out to him and get the specific location. I'd appreciate that.
Excellent. Mr. Santucci, do you want to have the chief comment on the dogs off the leash? We know that is a Broward County ordinance.
Thank you, of course. Captain Brimlow?
Sure thing. Yes, there was a report that was written on it, Ms. Reed, so you can get a copy of that as well. And the animal control was notified. In this particular case, I think the dogs, if my recollection is correct, the dogs were put up by the owner. So they must have let them back out later again in the day, even though, as Commissioner Preston pointed out, they did give assurance that the dogs would not be out. Again, in good faith, they did indicate they were putting the dogs away, but a report has been generated on it. And Ms. Reed, if you want to contact us, we can get you a copy of that once it's through the approval system. And animal control also has been notified.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. I don't see anybody else from the public coming forward. I'm going to go ahead and close it to the public.
Item number 6, well, there's one item on consent, so I'm going to read it. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving an interlocal agreement with Broward County, Florida for Broward County staff services in connection with hearings before the County Unsafe Structures Board, authorizing the city manager to execute the interlocal agreement, providing for severability and an effective date.
Commission? Is there anyone from the public who care to comment on this item? Okay, I'm going to close it to the public. Is anyone written in, or is there anyone there in the chamber to speak on this?
No one has written in, sir.
Okay.
And there's nobody in the chambers.
All right, but it's closed to the public. Commission?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Preston, second by Vice Mayor Parnas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, my apologies, but there is a fee provided for in here for the county services.
My apologies. If we could do roll
Thank you.
call, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 7 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, repealing resolution number 2009/163 and providing for revised policies and donation of city funds to charitable and public purpose organizations, providing for conflicts and an effective date.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that care to comment on this item? I'm going to close it to the public then, not seeing anybody coming forward. Commission?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Drosky, second by Vice Mayor Parnas. I believe I can do I don't have to do a roll call on this one.
Correct.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
Item number 8 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the ranking and award of request for proposals number 20-37-JW for the preparation of the city's evaluation and appraisal report and update to the comprehensive plan in an amount not to exceed $58,500, authorizing execution of an agreement with Lee Robertson Kerr and Associates, Inc., the top-ranked firm, providing for severability and an effective date.
Mr. City Manager, have any comments on this item?
Yes, so if I could have Mr. Power address this item to explain to the City Commission what the evaluation and appraisal report is and why it is needed.
Thank you.
Good evening, Eric Power, Director of Plan Development Services, City of Deerfield Beach. The state of Florida is a growth state, and it requires that we have a comprehensive plan. And the state then requires that every 7 years, we update our comprehensive plan for something called the Evaluation and Appraisal Report, or the EAR, as all planners love acronyms. And this EAR is essentially a capture moment for anything and everything that has changed and updated with the state and other agencies that are above the municipality, so that we can adopt and incorporate those things into the comprehensive plan. There are multiple examples. The most recent is something called peril of flood, which is an item that we use for the beach and storm-related events and things of that nature. So what we typically do, and most municipalities do, is we do hire a consultant because it is extremely extensive, the amount of work that has to go into an item like this. It does take approximately a year for this entire project to go forward. Pretty much every single department in the city is a part of this when it comes to how they're impacted to the comprehensive plan. And this item is due to the city to be reviewed actually next year. However, with the current budget situation and the requests that have been made by management, the Plan Development Services Department was able to use the money for this service in this year's budget, so that next year's budget would not be needed. And we have also done everything we can to make this an item that will also require city staff involvement. So the planning staff will be taking on a much larger role than would typically be done. We're also utilizing the GIS department from our IT staff and members from our environmental services departments as well, so that we could reduce this cost by as much as possible. And this bid is about half of what we were expecting we would be allocating if this was going to be in next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Anyone in the chamber or anyone who's written in? Okay, I'm going to close it to the public. Commission?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hudak, second by Vice Mayor Parnas. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Okay, we are now at comments by administration and legal. Mr. Manager, would you like me to go first?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor. Okay, I just have one comment for tonight. I am requesting an executive session in the case of Town of Hillsborough Beach v. City of Deerfield Beach, case number 17-007784. I believe you've all been contacted about scheduling for that purpose, so that should happen in the next few weeks. No further comments from the city attorney.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have any comments for this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we are now at City Commission business. Item number 9 is the City Manager Performance Evaluation.
Okay. Commission? Commissioner Hudak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a process that I had brought forth before the commission, and I guess it was December of last year. And I want to thank the commission for moving forward with this. I know, doing performance reviews are not the most exciting things that we get to do. But I know it's in this contract, but it's also important. It's important to give individuals direction on how they are doing and ways that they can improve. Back in January, I started the process where I provided the city manager the goals that I wanted him to accomplish to this point so forth. The other commissioners have started that process now. Now, while going through the form, I did notice that there is a little challenge with the arithmetic. So we will have to tweak the form, and that's something that we had talked about early on, is that this is our first year of doing a written form. So there are going to be areas where we will need some improvement. So I do ask you to please reach out to me with your comments on the form, on what you would like to see improved. And I will do my best to make those adjustments and not significantly change the form itself. So again, I do appreciate everybody taking an opportunity to do this exercise. I personally, when I originally talked with the city manager and provided him with his initial goals, the goals were public safety, communication, public relations, budget and financing and management, and employee relations. When we discuss those, I am more than impressed with what our city manager has been able to do, as discussed earlier by Commissioner Drosky. Nobody could foresee what we were going to experience as a country, as a city back in December. And what we've been able to get through under the leadership of this commission, as well as the city manager, is completely incredible. And so I have rated him as excellent in those areas. Moving forward for 2020, 2021, the items that I've set as my goals for him are budget and finance management, communications and public relations, employee relations, and economic development. Those are the areas that I think the city is going to be, we're going to have to pay close attention to. Again, these department heads, this city manager, this dais has done everything we can to save every job for all of the employees of the city. And I just want to commend everybody for doing their due diligence and working that hard to make sure that we save everybody's position. I know everybody would love to have increases, but sometimes that's not always in the cards. And the bigger picture is saving jobs. And I know a lot of people who have been adversely affected by this 11.8% unemployment. And I'm very proud that this commission and this city staff has been able to not contribute to that unemployment rise that we have seen not only in the city of Deerfield Beach, but in the county of Broward, the state of Florida, and the United States. So those are my comments. Again, I commend the city manager for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudak. Commissioner Hudak, excuse me. Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify something first before I get into my comments. The budget that we approved for not having layoffs assumes that there's no increases. If unions want to insist upon increases, that no layoff policy or stance may have to change. And so I just want to make that very, very clear that we have worked very hard to hold the line, but if we are pushed, that line may move. So I just want to make that very clear. Has nothing to do with the city manager evaluation, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. I wanted to actually make that comment earlier, and Commissioner Hudak reminded me to make it now. With respect to the evaluation, when I went through the form, I found it a little clunky, if I'm being honest. There's some categories and line items, and I'm certainly not going to go line by line because there's 10 categories with 5 items in each, so we'd be here all night. I found some of the categories I just wasn't able to honestly evaluate the city manager because it asserts, principles that he works here every day that I'm not here to witness. I don't know his interactions, with staff. I don't know what he communicates to them on a daily basis. I know how he communicates with me, and I know how he communicates with us as a body during these meetings. But I don't know how he individually communicates, and that may take time for that knowledge to seep in. So I don't think that I could give him a fair assessment when I'm not able to witness it firsthand. And a lot of these questions basically want you to have that base of knowledge that I don't have. And one of the questions, says to disseminate complete and accurate information equally to all members, meaning the commission. Well, I don't know what he disseminates to the rest of you. I know what he disseminates to me. And if I knew what he disseminated to you, there'd probably be a violation of the sunshine. So some of these questions I found very hard to grade. And as a result, I gave middle of the line scores only because I have middle of the line answers for them. So, so perhaps the math didn't work out in this particular scenario only because the form just didn't lend itself to me, to grade that way. I mean, I by nature am a very hard grader, in my personal practice and my reviews for the attorneys and staff. I have never, ever given a 5 on an evaluation. I've never done it. I mean, I don't think anyone is perfect. I've never received a 5, and I don't want a 5 because I can always, there's no room for improvement if you get a 5. We can always do better. We can always strive for more. But as I said earlier in my comments, I think what the city manager inherited and what he's been able to do with that deck of cards that was stacked against him is nothing short of phenomenal. Between the COVID situation and the budget crisis that we are in, in addition to that, he's made some new hires here in the city. I've not had an opportunity to interact with all of those new hires. Some I have, some I haven't. So I just need more time to evaluate those relationships as well, just to see going forward. The one critique that I do have in all of this is that I would like to see the city manager be able to follow up on my requests in a more diligent manner, I guess. And what I mean by that is if I communicate something to the city manager, which I'm supposed to do because I'm not supposed to reach out to all the individual staff members, is that it just gets followed up on a timely basis. And so there are some things that I've asked that I get responses the same day, and there are some things that I've requested that to this day I have not received. And so it's one of two things. It's either that the city manager is delegating my requests to his department heads and staff, and they are letting him down by not following up, which I think is true to a certain extent, or he's not delegating enough and taking on too much responsibility on his own shoulders. And that's not fair to him as well. So it's one or the other, and there has to be a way to sift through that. And some of the things that I asked for seem very, very minor. And in the grand scheme of things, and in all of the projects and all of the issues that we have going on in the city, especially in the COVID world, are probably extremely unimportant when viewed outside of that box. But the person who asked me that question that I'm relaying, it's very important to him or to her. And so not getting a timely response back to the resident reflects upon me as the elected official. So I would just like to see more of an effort to see that the responses, all of them, whether it comes from the city manager or his staff, it doesn't bother me just so long as they get responded to. And if that's the worst critique that I have during this entire process, I think the city manager is way far above where he should be, because to not be able to nitpick on some of the bigger items, I think is a testament to the leadership that he's brought in here. I think the staff looks up to the city manager. In fact, I know the staff looks up to the city manager. The morale of the employees has improved here since with the city manager. So there are a lot of positives. I mean, I always like to bring out one critique, how we can all improve, but all in all, I think it's been an excellent job, and I'm going to submit my form to the city clerk when we are done here tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Preston.
I have already submitted my evaluation to the city attorney. I think it is okay for this commission to be tough in its judging, and I can understand what you're saying, Commissioner Drosky. However, I take a little bit a different approach. If you put a 5 down on an evaluation form, it should be assumed that that is achievable. If you're putting down numbers and a value system that is unachievable, we're not being fair with him. So we're going to put a 5 down, excellent, but it's not really attainable. That doesn't make any sense to me. If you put it down on the paper, it ought to be achievable. If we don't think that anybody can ever achieve a 5, then don't put it there. Because people by nature will want to achieve whatever the best is, and they will do what they need to do. Now, it may be subjectively, one person can say you meet that criteria, another person may say no. What we may want to do is define exactly what each of those values are. Excellent. Above average, average, below average, poor. By definition, what does any of them really mean? But if you put down a 5, to me, I assume that that is achievable. If it's not achievable, it should not be there. What I look at is this. When we have the city manager in a position, he has a multiplicity of considerations, multiplicity of jobs in the city that is going on that his attention requires. Question is, for the citizens of Deerfield Beach, for the taxpayers that pay taxes to this city and is partially responsible for his job, is he making a difference? Yes or no? Is he able to function in a manner that brings credibility to our city? And that really means all areas. I look at the individuality of the person, and I look at my ability to communicate with that person. Is there an atmosphere of communication? Do I feel like I can go to the city manager and that, he is listening? And so there are some measurable values that we can look at as we go through that process. But I'd like to thank Commissioner Hudak for actually bringing it forward, even though I feel that some of the categories are very, very subjective. But you know what? We didn't have anything. Commissioner Hudak took it upon himself to put something out there so that we would have a building block, a foundation to go ahead, because we all know the criticism that was out there about a city manager not being evaluated. And we mustn't overlook that. He understood what it was, and I think he did a good job bringing something forward, making us look at it, making us actually think about evaluating him. And like I said, I have called the city manager on different issues. He's been right there. He's been right there, and he has. I think that there was a lack of experience on his part, but you have to look at this. Is he in a position to grow? Is he receptive to ideas? And I would have to say, from my experiences, yes, he is. And I think he cares about this community. I think that he thinks of every district like he should. And so that's what I look at. So if a 5 is on the paper, I expect for him to strive to be excellent. If we as a board said that's unattainable, then let's take it off the paper.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Parnas, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I would. I think the city manager's job is to carry out the policies that this commission gives him. Period. That's his job. For us to sit here and nitpick, to me, is ludicrous. Our job is to set policy. His job is to carry those policies out. Simple question. Is he doing it or is he not doing it? That's what evaluations are all about. Does he need improvement in an area? I think that's a discussion for the commission to either change a policy, improve a policy, correct the manager if he's not following policy. Other than that, he's in charge of the day-to-day operations of this city. The personnel, all departments, they come under his jurisdiction. And we've hired him because we feel he will follow our policy that we set. And that's the criteria. Measuring that isn't all that difficult. I want to commend, incidentally, the city manager, Eric Powers, in our legal department for getting together for a problem that needed to be solved for a long time. And they've worked out a solution that I'm very happy with. We have many illegal things going on by certain vendors, and they're putting a stop to it. They found a way, and I commend them for that because it couldn't go on forever. These people are stealing from customers and the city by not following proper fees when they're supposed to be by law followed. So as far as I'm concerned, Mike, you did an excellent job in designing the initial form. Does it maybe need improvement? I think an executive session where we fine tune that might be in order, where we're all there to improve the policies we give him to be followed out. And if he's doing a good job, I've given 5s to people. I've also given 1s to people if I really thought they were terrible. That's a judgment call. But as far as his job, that's our decision to make the policy that he is to follow. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, I have always felt, having been up here for a long time, that an evaluation of an employee or the city manager in particular, because that's the only employee that we have the ability to actually pass judgment on, has always been a work in progress. I've always felt that an evaluation of someone's performance is something that goes on a regular basis, not just at the end of the year. We've always treated it that way. The charter has specified, or I believe the contract had specified, that there should be one. So formalizing it is fine. Now, there isn't a performance evaluation out there that really captures the essence of someone's performance perfectly. I don't expect that. And it is subjective depending on how people decide they want to grade. I've worked with employees and employers, whether I've been a boss or been someone who has a boss, in which each one handles it differently. Some you can't get the highest score, or it's a very high ladder to climb to get to that point. Others have been more liberal with it, and that's really subjective, and that's fine as far as I'm concerned, because we're not accumulating all of our scores and coming together to give them one overall grade. There's been a lot of great points brought up. When it comes to the city manager's position, I can only talk about my experience. So when we have a question like, is the city manager carrying out, And I'll give you an example of one that's a tough question because you're only limited to what you know. That there's the city manager base, and I'm trying to find it, but I can't, unfortunately. That carries out directives of the body as a whole, as opposed to those of any one member of a minority group. It sounds to me like we would have to have knowledge of what is being conveyed by each one of us to the city manager and whether or not he's following that. That you're limited to what information you know. What you do know is what's been decided up here as a board and what directives have been passed on to the city manager and how that's executed. Though I will say this, David Santucci has inherited a heck of a mess when he came in here. On top of we had a project that was literally on the rocks. We had an unforeseen future with this COVID, which no one could expect the kind of impact it would have on us. I think every hurdle you could throw at Mr. Santucci has been there, including from the minute he took his job. You had a gaggle of fools who have accused him of crimes that he didn't have the right person. I mean, this is the kind of disgusting things that he's had to deal with, and I thought he's done an outstanding job in handling that. It's easy to give someone high marks when it comes to character because I don't think I've found anybody with it's better than Mr. Santucci when it comes to his personal character attributes. His job performance in some areas there's room for improvement, and there's areas where he's doing an outstanding job. Overall, my rating based on what we have here would put him certainly above average. If the circumstances, and I do applaud him, we have this in our backup that he has asked that obviously that he's not looking for, or nor would he accept an increase at this point. If we were in any position to give an increase, my recommendation at this point is because he is so new. We've just appointed his salary to him, and it is a learning curve in which we're all getting to know him. I think it's too small of a sample size to justify an increase. Should we even be in a position to do that at this point? But overall, I think we made the right choice of the person that's in this position. There's certainly room for improvement, as there is with any employee, and there's improvement with all of us. But I think he's done an outstanding job, and certainly under the circumstances, we're really happy, I would say, based on all the comments of the job that you're doing, David. So thank you very much. Commission, I will submit this to the city attorney at the conclusion of this meeting. And I also plan on sitting with David Santucci to go over this as well individually. City attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a couple suggestions tonight about, revising the form and a couple of suggested formats for doing so: executive session, direct contact. What I would just suggest is I can certainly work with Commissioner Hudak, and we can bring something back for a future agenda because I believe the contract calls for the form to be approved by resolution of the City Commission. So that was all, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, say that again.
There's been a couple of suggestions about how to go about changing this form, direct contact or via executive session. And my suggestion is to bring something back before the commission for discussion because the contract requires it be approved by resolution. And I could certainly work with Mr. Hudak to do that. You guys could have further discussion on it for next year.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we're at comments by mayor and city commission.
Okay, I'm going to start with District 4.
Of course you are. I would like to announce that this Saturday, even though it's a holiday weekend, May 5th, I'm having my monthly office hours virtually from 10 to noon. So contact me or the city manager's office if you'd like to make an appointment. I think there's like one slot left if you're so inclined. Another issue is I started to talk to the city manager before the meeting about this, and it has to deal with our bulk pickup here in the city of Deerfield Beach. For example, my personal bulk pickup is on Mondays. but very rarely does bulk come on Monday anymore to actually get it. It usually bleeds into Tuesday, and there's several reasons for that. One, during COVID, there are staffing issues that we have in that department. Two, it's the summertime, so we have storms frequently throughout the days, which puts it behind. Three, we have mechanical issues from time to time with the trucks. And four is just an increase in volume with more people at home, more people working at home, more people doing home improvement projects. The volume is increased by a minimum of 20% here in the city. And so I think the residents are patient with it. I mean, they understand. Once I remind them that our bulk pickup is weekly, whereas in any other city you'll find in our county, it's quarterly at best. That really puts everyone at ease. But the reason, on Mondays when they come out west in the afternoons or on Tuesday is because the route starts Monday in the mornings in the east. So you've got trucks that are going all around the city. So I'd like the city manager to reevaluate with the environmental services, or if it's, if that's the right department to just reevaluate the routes. I'm not looking to change the frequency of bulk pickup. I'm just thinking there could be better efficiencies if we were to look at, the routes and how the routes are handled, and the four issues that I mentioned before. You're never going to do away with those, and those will always be present. But maybe there's some better efficiencies that can be had in the bulk pickup process. So if that could be looked at, I would appreciate it. And then maybe it would give a little more consistency to the residents that they know if their bulk pickup day is Monday, then yeah, more than likely on Monday the truck is going to potentially be there, knowing that any of these four issues or other or a combination thereof or other factors may push it into the other day, but maybe we can get some more consistency. So if that could be looked at, I for one would appreciate it. And then last but not least, this is a holiday weekend. I hope everyone is safe. If you go out, please wear your mask. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's go with District 3, Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the city staff for my Zoom District 3 meeting. It went well. I appreciate the fact that all necessary people were there. Second, I'm glad that we're able to ease up a little bit with the COVID-19. I look at the figures every day and they have slowed down. So his reopening the pier to tourism is not a bad thing. As long as they're wearing a mask and social distancing is maintained, I think it's a plus. District 3, we have our pickup on Friday, and 99% of the time it's done on Friday. And we're in the west, not the eastern part of the city, but our particular day is Friday. My other area in Crystal Lake, it's Tuesday. And people are now making an effort to put it out the night before so that it's picked up on its proper day. And I will say this about sustainable management. 99% of the time, the bulk pickup truck is on time, on day, and does a good job of cleanup where there's a mess with stuff that's brought out. So I want to commend them for that. Other than that, everybody stay healthy, watch for safety. And I think I'm going to mention this. The station that was in Makita Ogiva Park for testing for the virus has been moved to Quiet Waters Park. You don't need an appointment. And I believe that starts either Saturday or Sunday this week. And I think it's a good thing that the people in the West now have an opportunity to get tested easily in their car without an appointment. We've just moved west. And after a while, maybe we'll move to the south. But in the meanwhile, it's a good thing. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. District 2?
Yes, I was going to comment on the testing site being moved. I've been contacted by a few, actually quite a few people was saying that where it was more centrally located, and that they wish that it could have remained there. So do I. It was very successful at Oviedo McKeithen. The numbers really spiked. And this was because it was accessible. I wish there would be reconsideration because, as I said, I've been contacted by a lot of people and saying that, it was more centrally located. What's going to happen now? The other thing is that disproportionately, Latinos and Blacks are affected by the COVID-19 in infections and in death. And so to me, it would make more sense to put it to where the problem really is. But a decision was made. I'm glad that it was there for the time that it was there. It was highly effective, and it really served the community. And I think that all the city staff that was associated with making it a success, I would like to thank them all. It was a great job, and I really, really appreciate that. For the upcoming holiday, everybody stay safe. The Vice Mayor was talking about wearing masks. This is so important. I just heard, a spokesman from the CDC saying that if everybody in the country wore a mask, I don't remember the percentage of that they say that it would likely go down, the cases for positive, but it was pretty big. And so that we could get this thing under control if everybody participates. And the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program, I'd like to thank staff for coming up with an idea, understanding the complexity of this disease and the issues that it causes and the strain that it's putting on people. In the city of Deerfield Beach have a Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. I would like to urge everybody out there to please donate to this. This is your neighbors. People are suffering. The illusion would be that, hey, we're past this. It's not as bad as it seemed. Yes, it is. People are losing their jobs. People are suffering, and people are hurting. So if you would, please donate to our Neighbors Helping Neighbors so that your neighbor, residents in the city of Deerfield Beach, can do a little bit better in this very awful time of suffering.
Thank you very much. District 1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Commissioner Preston, thank you very much for having that center at Oviedo McKeithen. I know it was due to your efforts, so the city really, really does appreciate it. It will be moving actually on Sunday, Vice Mayor Parnas. So yes, it'll be moving from Oviedo McKeithen. Saturday will be the last day that it's testing at Oviedo McKeithen. And then on Sunday, starting at 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., it'll be moving over to Quiet Waters. And again, that will be in-car testing as opposed to having to get out of your vehicle and do it as we've done it in the past at Oviedo McKeithen. It has been tremendously successful. And again, I think the residents really appreciate that, Commissioner Preston. Neighbors Helping Neighbors, I'm glad you brought that up as well. And again, thank you to Commissioner Drosky for helping increase the funding of that program. Anybody who is in need, please contact city staff. The program has been funded, and for those of you that are in need, please take advantage of it where you can. My Saturday hours will be September 12th. I think I only have one opening left. Please contact Erica if you need to go ahead and see me. We have a food drive tomorrow at Quiet Waters. Commissioner Preston and I are usually out there. but I do not believe either one of us will be able to make it tomorrow. It's a tremendous event. I think we usually see about 500-600 cars there every other weekend. We had a tremendous food drive at St. Ambrose Church last Saturday. Started off slow, but we were able to get the word out, and we got a lot of great volunteers that helped us help out a lot of people in our community. And that's all that I want to say, except be safe during the holiday weekend as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are, these times are improving, but there's still a lot of people that are in need. And I want to thank staff for coming up with the assistance programs. I do want to thank Commissioner Drosky, not just for his efforts up here in the dais to get more contributions put into that fund to help our residents, but personally reaching into his own pocket and donating to that plan, along with Miss Margaret Peggy Ross, who's donated individually to that, and Senior Pastor Donnie Augustin from the Bethesda Christian Center, who donated $1,000 to go towards this program. It is greatly appreciated. And there are many people that are in need. Tomorrow's food giveaway is one great event. I do want to thank Commissioner Hudak and really city staff as well. When they had the St. Ambrose food giveaway, it started slow, as Commissioner Hudak pointed out. He made several phone calls to a lot of us to try to get more of the word out, to make sure people are aware of it. And by the time I showed up there, it was in full swing, and we had quite a line of cars to get there, and everybody came together, our city employees, our elected officials, to get the word out, to make sure people were aware of that unique location for the food giveaway. And they had a wonderful assembly line. So we want to thank St. Ambrose Church for doing an outstanding job that they did. The other thing is the census. The census. It's absolutely essential for us to get people to fill out the census. It is private. It is anonymous. It will not be tracked back to you, but is essential for our city government moving forward to make sure you are counted. So please get out there and take part in the census. It's easy. The census takers are going door to door right now. They will come to your house at least 6 times to try to make sure that you have it filled out. To avoid that, please make sure that you fill out the census. You can do it online. It's very easy, simple, and will not take a lot of your time. For all the efforts that our city staff is doing, we still need to get our numbers up. It's disappointing that we don't have enough people participating in it. I do want to thank city staff and Rebecca Medina, Dave Hunt, and their team for doing an outstanding job with the joint PSA that we did about wearing masks with all of the coastal mayors from Lauderdale by the Sea, Mayor Vincent, Mayor Trost from, Mayor Trost from Lighthouse Point. We had our Mayor Deb Tarrant from the Village of Hillsborough Beach, and we also had Mayor, and my gosh,
Harden.
Thank you, Rex Harden from Rex Harden from Pompano Beach. All of us came together to do a PSA. I'm really glad that we were able to do that. Just remind people to wear a mask. You know, there are people that have different theories, and I love these doctors, these, people who graduated from Google School of Medicine, who think they know what should be done. The vast majority of experts have said that wearing the masks have helped us curb these numbers. And there are people that want to criticize it and make it a partisan issue. And that's just silly nonsense. And I don't have time for people like that, quite frankly. It's time for us to do what's right, look out for each other. And I would bet if you thought those masks were saving your life rather than helping your neighbor, you'd certainly be wearing it. So let's keep doing that, and let's be safe. Have a safe holiday weekend. And I will ask this of the city staff. We have a lot of issues with people speeding in our city. We're starting to see a lot more complaints. We did a really good job of curbing some things, but we did that in an answer to some of the tragedies that we had on Hillsborough, certainly in the west area of the city. We had a gentleman here tonight talking about in some of the residential areas over on 5th Avenue. We need to make sure that we are in high alert to curb some of this speeding. There's less people on the roads these days, and the ones that are on the road seem to think it's a speedway because there's less traffic, and we can't have that. So let's be safe this holiday weekend. Thank you for all that you do, and I appreciate everything that everyone's been doing. Thank you.
Everybody stay safe.
Stay safe. We're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Don't forget about what's happening on the 12th, Mr. Mayor.
What's that? Oh, okay. I'll throw this in. Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize because we will not have another meeting before that time. On the 12th, we have our Junior Angler Day at 8, starting at 8 a.m. over at our fishing pier. We have COVID restrictions in place, and we're looking to have another great time. There's a lot of wonderful people to come out for that. It's a great experience for the kids. We know that the Deerfield Beach bubble will be in effect, and hopefully we'll have fantastic weather like we've always had. Come out and have an outstanding time at this event. And thank you for reminding me, Commissioner Hudak. With that, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hudak. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.